Neglected to mention at the beginning of session 1 that if you have questions, just go ahead and write them down, and then at the end we'll address them. That way we can just keep going through it, because it's kind of a lot of information, long PowerPoint, but I'll try to be done on time. And if you have a group question, definitely ask it here in this format. If you have a private matter that you need guidance on or suggestions, you're welcome to come up and talk to me afterwards, or my email is at the end of the PowerPoint, and I'm happy to respond back at length, and what is typed into my computer stays on my computer, so I don't gossip. And I'd just be happy to give you some wisdom and hopefully some encouragement. Okay, so we've been talking about curriculum, and people are more concerned about curriculum than anything else except maybe socialization, and actually I think neither one of them are the most important thing. So I think your child will learn with any curriculum as long as you are cheerful and guiding them and helping them and encouraging them. And if all you did was use your Bible, your kid would learn a lot. If you just went to the library and bought consumable workbooks at Costco or Walmart, or and they learn penmanship, they'll do really great. A few of the curriculums that we have successfully used over time include Abeka for science and history, and we use the ACE School of Tomorrow for English and math, and we use Wordly Wise for vocabulary starting in middle school. And we also use a reason for handwriting and a reason for spelling. I do think it's important your children learn both to print and also to do cursive. The reason that cursive is important to learn is because our country's founding documents and the most important documents over time, like the Magna Carta, were all written in long cursive form. And at some point in time, I think that there will be people who change what our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution say. I think they'll put it online and say, this is what it says, and you need to make sure you have a copy of the original, well, not the original, but a print of the original, and read it for yourself. Because God did endow us with inalienable rights, and we need to teach that to our children, and we need to understand what the Bill of Rights says. And I just think it's really important to learn to read cursive. Plus, your cursive signature is your bank account, your loans, your legal signature. And it is, I know my legal signature is hard to copy, and I have it that way on purpose. My dad taught me to sign it like a doctor would, and then nobody can copy it. So I think it's real important that our kids learn print and also cursive. All right, so we're going to talk about teaching methods, and the best thing to do is to just engine search these terms, and then you'll learn a lot more. So I'm just going to kind of briefly touch on them, and then I'm going to talk about which curriculum actually is in that teaching method. Okay, so the Charlotte Mason method is about atmosphere, discipline, and life. And that sounds a little bit esoteric, but it's really good, especially for younger kids, because they should be experiencing your home, your community, their outdoor life. They should be exposed to good books that either you're reading aloud to them or they're learning to read for themselves. So there's a Charlotte Mason is a very popular method, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe she was English from the 1800s, and now there's a provider called Simply Charlotte Mason, and they stopped coming to our conference, and I wish they'd come again next year. I'm still working on getting them there. Okay, then a classical style, which you might have heard of, say, classical conversation, something like that. That is devouring facts, evaluating facts, and applying knowledge. And that is a reading and discussion-based method. So If you feel like you're going to maybe raise an attorney, you have a child that argues all the time and wins the arguments because their proof is so good, that might be a style you want to consider them learning. Then correspondence and online schools, you can do that, and that's really been around for a long, long time. You do need to make sure that there's a funny thing about how it's supposed to have some sort of outreach to Colorado, and I think so like Abeka, their DVDs, would work. So you just got to check with the provider. Then the eclectic approach is something of everything, and that's really what most people start doing after about the 5th year of homeschooling. Because you know how you teach, you know how your kids learn, they're each different, you know where they're going, and so you pick to that. Multi-level versus individual, so that's why I said if you have one child, then it's a tailor-made for them. But if you have a whole bunch of stair-step kids like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, then a multi-level approach would be really good. Principal approach is a really good approach, and not very many people talk about it or use it, but I think it's really good. I wish I'd known about it when we first started. It's gaining popularity in Africa, where a lot of Christian pastors are wanting to raise up the next generation of leaders in different African countries. They're using the principal approach. Generations, which is an affiliate ministry for Czech, is working. In fact, they have produced a principal approach curriculum, and that basically is everything is based on the Bible, what the Bible says, and then how that applies to all the subjects. Traditional textbook, workbook based, though, that's like if you use Bob Jones University textbooks or Pensacola Christian College, they were developed for classrooms, but then Christian homeschoolers also use them. Then unit studies, that's where, and I think this works really good for all ages, but especially in elementary and preschool, you decide, okay, we're going to study the Grand Canyon and the Anasazis, or we're going to study beavers, or we're going to study the Knights of the Round Table, and you study everything you can, but history, geography, the science of making concrete, whatever. Is it say we're going to study castles? Okay, so you study the regions in Europe, what their castles were like versus the castles along the north coast of Africa. You learn about how they made concrete, or how maybe even the Peruvians made their castles like Machu Picchu without any mortar at all, and the stones are perfectly set, and then what the people wore, who was fighting who. So it's a topical thing that you base then your history, your literature, your writing, your math, everything around that. And unit studies are really fun when you have a bunch of kids. And then of course you have to make handmade things like paper mache maps and castles made out of sugar cubes and things like that. Okay, so specific options by teaching methods. So classical style would be Veritas Press, Memoria Press, Classical Conversations. So if you think that's a style that interests you, then you can look up all of those online. If you don't have internet at home, of course you can go to the library and use their internet. And then correspondence schools like Abeka, Switched On Schoolhouse, Monarch, Veritas Online. Charlotte Mason method would be Ambleside Online, Simply Charlotte Mason, and Living Books curriculum. Multi-level versus individual would include My Father's World or Heart of Wisdom. The principal approach is the Christian discipleship curriculum from Generations. Traditional textbook workbook would be Bob Jones, Abeka, Rod and Staff, ACE, Christian Liberty. Unit studies would include Konos, 5 in a Row, Tapestry of Grace, and Christian Cottage Schools, which is actually based in Larkspur. Terry Spray and her husband Mike founded that, and they offer testing and evaluation and also unit studies. And all of their curriculum they're also translating into Spanish. And then finally, the eclectic approach, and again, if you look at Kathy Duffy's, there'll be a lot of information in there. Okay, so Who considers themselves not to be a math person? Like they hate math, okay? And then who is like a rocket science math person? Okay, yes, me too. Not that I did rocket science, but. So math sometimes has to be on its own. And a lot of curriculums offer their math, but then some people don't like the math that comes with the curriculum. So it's really worth checking out. And especially if you have a hands-on learner, you want to use manipulatives to understand base 10 and multiplication and things like that. So early childhood would be Abeka, Matthew C., McMinn, ACE, that's what we use, and Singapore math, and I couldn't tell you what Singapore math is, but I do know Asians are pretty smart, so I would get it's pretty good. Independent options would be teaching textbooks, Saxon Dive, algebra, video text. Hands-on options, making math meaningful, Life of Fred, McMinn, and Right Start. And then traditional textbook options would be Saxon, Bob Jones, AOP, Christian Light, and Horizons. We used Saxon for many years, but unless your kid is a really strong reader, I think it's a hard math to use. And then free options would be Khan Academy and AAA Math. And Khan Academy is a huge learning website that has everything, but it is secular, so just to give you the heads up on that. Algebra video text under that independent options, that man who wrote that program used to help write and publish the Saxon Math, and he felt like homeschoolers needed a user-friendly high school math program that students could do on their own when their parents felt math challenged. And so he created algebra video text, and our family actually owns it, and a couple of my kids used it, and it's very, very good, especially if you have somebody who's going to be going into STEM or computer technology, math, that kind of thing. Okay, then there's also always free resources. And I give you a little caution on this. You know, there's a lot of really good pay-for curriculum that people have invested a lot of time and research into. And so it's great to get free things, but it's also good to invest in quality curriculum that you pay for. And at the CHEC conference, the Rocky Mountain Christian Homeschool Conference in June, we have a lot of curriculum providers come, and they provide you with training and teach you how to use their books and why maybe their curriculum is better suited to your family than somebody else's. So free downloads are fine. It does cost you a lot of ink, right? And we all know that ink is the most expensive thing to buy at Walmart. So anyway, it's fine to use free stuff, but then as your child gets older and you want something maybe a little more researched and appropriate, then think about regular packaged curriculum. Okay, then these are all websites that you can download stuff from. Some of them are Christian and some of them are not. All right, these are catalogs that I would suggest you request for review, and you can do that online. Abeka, AOP, Apologia, BJU, those are the major curriculum providers. Then Christian book distributors, their website carries a lot of things you can look at. Memorial Press, My Father's World, and then Rainbow Resource they sell everything, and their catalog is like 2 inches thick, but like the Kathy Duffy's, you can read through the whole thing and understand what the different curriculums are. In 20 years of homeschooling, 25 years, I've never found the perfect curriculum. I think you just use what works for whatever kid and for your teaching style and what you have time for. And I have never found the perfect spelling curriculum. I feel like I'm a great speller, and my kids are all terrible spellers, and I wish I knew how to fix that. I think you're born with the spelling gene, or you're not, maybe. So anyway, use what you can, and again, you can use your Bible and the library, and that works too. Okay, does anybody here feel like they have a special needs or struggling student? Okay, So I want to encourage you, because I had a number of struggling students who were biological and adopted. And I just want to say that I think it works really well for these kids, and it can be done. And there's so much distraction in a regular classroom setting that they do not have at home. So I think it's a great way to educate them. There's less chaos and stress and more focus. I talked about my daughter who had the math issues and just a lot of trauma brain stuff, and homeschooling has been really good for her. Get information and use resources available. Czech has stuff on our website, so does HSLDA. Nathan is a really unique ministry. They have a lot of things, and there's also online forums, Facebook groups. If you have a child, say, that has autism or dyslexia or obsessive compulsive disorder, there's a Facebook group for you. And they're helpful, because other people are saying, yeah, I have this problem, and I tried doing this. You need to advocate for your child and invest in them. And I skipped the line about support groups. I think if you can get into a support group that is in your area of town that has some nice families, it doesn't matter if they have special needs kids or not, that's just really good, safe place for your kid to learn social skills and how to make friends, how to behave in public. And I think most homeschool families are really patient and tolerant. I remember a couple, and I'm the homeschool group leader in Morgan County, and I remember a couple times I had to have one of my kids sit in timeout the entire activity day because she was just so out of control. And I'd go sit by her, and then I'd get up and I'd help other kids, and then I'd go sit back by her. And not one single friend in that group made a judgment about what I had to do with my kid. So I do think it's helpful. There are services that you can get. I would not advise you to use public school systems, but if you have a good school in your area and you need help with speech or that kind of therapy, you can do that. A lot of hospitals also will offer speech and occupational therapy. Check with your insurance, see what pays for. Also, consider private consultations. In Colorado, we have ConnectEd, Diane Kraft, Terry Spray, and Early Roots. And you can just Google those on your engine search. And you need to evaluate your child's strengths and their weaknesses and help them with both. I mentioned earlier that I had a book that I want to recommend. And first I want to say the Czech guidebook has a whole large chapter on struggling and special students. And it could be that you have a super highly gifted child, and it's talked about in there too, but there's a whole checklist of different labels, and you can self-diagnose your child. Does my child have this? Does my child have this? There's something even called pencil resistance. Did you know that? And that's in the Czech guidebook. This is an excellent book if you have a struggling learner, whether they have Down syndrome or they're just not receiving and processing information, maybe they have vision problems. It's called The Neurodevelopmental Approach, and it's by Linda Kane. And if this is a book you would benefit from, just come take a picture of it with your cell phone before I leave. But she's the one that I learned so much about. If your child is left-handed, then everything needs to be dominant on the left side. If they're right-handed, everything needs to be dominant on the right side. And if there's confusion in your child, they basically need to go back to crawling and creeping a few times a day to get their motor skills lined up, and that helps their brain retention. It's a fascinating, easy-to-read book. Linda Kane is the author. It's called The Neurodevelopmental Approach, and I have it listed here on the PowerPoint for resources. But if you're a reader, it's great to read. She also has a DVD you can buy that's basically an all-day PowerPoint of her talking about what's in the book. Okay, more considerations in curriculum. So principles that work for special needs and struggling students. Observe your child's behavior and progress and make notes as you go. So if there's something that doesn't just seem quite right about your kid, write it down and keep track of that. Begin at their ability level, not their grade level. So my daughter who struggled with math, she's probably working in about a 9th grade math book, even though she's a senior in high school. So you will only shut them down and frustrate them if you're trying to get them to learn something that's above their ability to learn. Be realistic. Start low for quick success, building confidence. Be consistent. Slow and steady wins the race. I felt like the best thing we did this last year with my daughter and her math is every day without fail we worked on it for a half an hour, she and I together. The consistency is super important. Be encouraging. At least 7 compliments for 1 correction. That's actually a parenting skill for every child, and it's very hard. And you have to make up things. I really like how you put the barrette at the back of your hair instead of the front. Or I really like that you are wearing 2 bright colored socks that don't match at all. It's just so fun and zany. You know, I mean, it's hard. But kids need compliments and encouragement just like we do. Get a baseline to start with and go from there. So maybe your child can't do anything right now, so that's your baseline. My child cannot recognize the letters of the alphabet and he's 10. Okay, that's your baseline. So then you start working on the letters of the alphabet and go from there. Short teaching times interspersed with exercise, hands-on learning, snack, and water. One of the control freak knee-jerk reactions we have in our society is that children should not get fat, like to eat. They should not eat fat, and they can have all kinds of soda and everything else. Really what they do need is they need, in the morning, at lunchtime, at snack, and at dinner, they need a protein, a carb, a fruit, that kind of thing, and water. If you have a child who's having struggling issues in school, make sure they're drinking like 4, 5, 6 bottles of water a day. You don't want to drown them, but interspersed throughout the day, they need to be drinking water, and they need to have good fat, like fat from bacon, fat from butter, fat from cheese, fat from whole milk, because their midline of their brain needs that. And one of the sad things that we've done in our society is when we've encouraged babies to drink formula instead of breast milk, and not all babies can drink breast milk, and we understand that, but formula does not have enough natural fat in it like breast milk does. And I'm a farmer, so we drink whole cow's milk. And that revolutionized my kids when they came to us through adoptive placement. It revolutionized their health. We cut sugar, we cut out food dyes, we made sure they were getting fat and protein and, fruit and vegetables, and it changed how they were able to process stuff. So it is important to take breaks, work for 10, 15 minutes, go outside, jump rope, run up and down the stairs, whatever you need to do, come back in, have water and a snack, and do another 15-minute segment. And then you can build that over time. You increase it to 20 minutes, and then 30 minutes, and that's like just per year. So by the time they're in high school, they can do a couple hours. Use alternative evaluation methods versus standardized testing. So standardized testing is basically for C and B students that fit in a box. And a struggling learner does not fit in a box. So use alternative assessments, whether you're going through the check guidebook and you're looking at those different things that they can and can't do, or you're going to a specialist who's going to give them, say, like a Woodcock-Johnson test versus a Iowa test. You need to get the assessment that they can exhibit their skills and weaknesses, because just an Iowa test isn't going to do that. Our public school system is built on standardized testing, and they're increasing it more and more every year, and that's not what kids need. Kindergartners, first graders, second graders do not need standardized tests, so it's okay if you do an alternative assessment. Don't be afraid to learn and use cutting-edge technology to help them, including electronics with Covenant Eyes and other protection. So all of our kids are really tech savvy. I mean, it's just scary, isn't it? But struggling learners, that might be the best way they can learn. So don't be afraid of it, but don't only use that. But it's okay for them to use technology, like if you have, say, a struggling learner who's very verbal but is not a very good writer, then instead of having them write out a paper, I mean, eventually they have to do that, but have them talk into the voice-activated software on your computer. That's how maybe they can give you the book report, okay? So don't be afraid of that. I do recommend security devices. We have Covenant Eyes on our computers and devices, and it's really great. It gives you a report every morning about what you maybe need to talk to your child about because they're on a certain website or whatever, and it promotes dialogue between parents and students. Okay, and here's the list about the neurodevelopmental approach by Linda Kane is on that last line. Okay, learning outside the box. So I think the best part of homeschooling is not using textbooks. Yes, we do use textbooks. Yes, we do use workbooks. But I think all these other things are like the best part of homeschooling. So animal husbandry with either pets or livestock, apprenticeships, like maybe you have a child who's really interested in taxidermy. If there's a taxidermist around you, have that child go start working with them when they're about 10 years old. And they'll learn to do that. Board games that challenge the mind and build relationships. We have always played board games one night on the weekend at our house, and it is so fun, and we're so competitive, it's scary. And, you know, it's just a blast, and you laugh. And I know homeschool families who the parents never laugh with their children. In fact, they think laughter is sinful. Well, I don't. God gave us laughter as a great emotion, and we can work through a lot of problems with laughter. Board games. Family vacations, including the Czech conference in June, field trips like Homeschool Day at the Capitol, hobby crafting with parents, grandparents, and supportive elders. And I think this is so important. You know, with my husband having passed away, and his parents are also gone to glory, and my parents live clear in Kansas, we have other older people in our community that are great talking to my kids, asking them what they're doing stuff with them. We just came off a fair, and all the neat people at fair were helping them with their animals. And it's just so important to learn to do hobbies that you're going to have for your whole life, whether it's gardening, photography, woodworking, doesn't matter. Meeting interesting people and family members, like family reunions, are so important. Libraries and museums, including their multimedia and hands-on items. And then play, unstructured. Creative, unbounded play is a child's and a teenager's best way of learning about the world around them. It is essential for physical and sensory development. So if you have a child who likes to get on a swing and spin around and around and around and around, and it makes you sick just watching them, that child is actually learning to integrate their senses and their physical movement, and it's a really good thing. I'm so sad that a lot of playgrounds are taking merry-go-rounds out, because that is a really important sensory builder. Reading versus television and screens. And you know, I struggle with this at my house. I have one teenager who you can't get a book away from her, and two other teenagers who you can't get a device away from them. So there needs to be a balance, and if you can encourage your kids to enjoy reading for the rest of their life, they will just be head and shoulders above everybody else. And then YouTube videos and documentaries are just fun. We have a favorite one we watched on YouTube where draft horses from this little community in Belgium, once a year, they put these big baskets on the backs of these huge draft horses, and they go out into the ocean and they get shrimp. And it was so interesting. It's our favorite one we ever watched. There's just so many neat things like that. Okay, so here's a picture, some pictures of my family doing things outside the box. So for years, my sons and daughters sewed costumes to go to the Civil War ball. And my daughter, in that blue and yellow white dress, that took 500 hours to sew. And then she wore it, and it was so cool. She wore it to several of them. Then on the upper right, that's my two oldest daughters in Tanzania helping my husband draft plans for an addition to an orphanage. And there were no tables, so they had to draft on the walls. And that is the trip they remember the most when talking about their dad. And then on the lower right is our family's last visit to see my mother-in-law, who died just shy of her 90th birthday of old age leukemia. And we went down and visited her every 3 months in Roswell, New Mexico when she got that diagnosis. And it was just so great being with her and talking to her and hearing all about the family. And then my kids are shown on top of one of our barns replacing a roof. And that's the kind of stuff they did with my husband, and they just loved it and learned so much and had so much fun. And so we did those things as a family, and then the kids all had individual things that they enjoyed doing. A couple of my daughters sewed, all my kids played the piano, they showed livestock at the fair. The upper left picture is my daughter who's the chef. She went on a people-to-people trip in high school to Australia. And yes, I did freak out when I put her on that plane. But just wonderful, thank you. You're so sweet. Wonderful, wonderful things they did. And then the top center picture is a special favorite of mine. That's my second oldest son, who's a very successful car dealer entrepreneur. And my husband, they both graduated with their MBAs in marketing at the same ceremony. It took my husband 5 years, and it took my son 1 year. And much to their complete shock, I bought them a graduation present of going tandem skydiving. And my son, who I never could surprise or freak out in his entire life, he was like, "We're what? We're what?" And then it was just so wonderful. So those are the best parts of homeschooling. Okay, prepare your child. So if you're just starting with young ones, the younger the better. Train your infants and toddlers to be ready by encouraging cheerful obedience and playful learning in the way they should go. Don't underestimate the interest of your younger kids listening to what you're doing with the older kids. Focus on the oldest child. If he or she can get homeschooling, the others will come along. Start simple, one subject at a time, focus on a few, then build to more. The 3 R's of reading, writing, and arithmetic are fundamental. Hands-on science outside is always a favorite of youngsters. Remember, homeschooling is not institutional school at home. Do teach what is required by the law as the basics, and follow a schedule that works for you, which is in compliance with the law, but have fun and do things that your family likes to do. Be sure to also teach what interests your family: art, gardening, construction, cooking, electronics, the list just goes on and on. Have fun. If you work on having positive, strong relationships, the learning will come, especially if you use Brainiac board games. And somebody says, "What's the Brainiac game?" And I said, no, it's the style of it. So like games like Cranium, Trivial Pursuit, things like Scattergories, those kind of brain builders. And jumping on the trampoline or with a rope for counting and spelling. Last week, my kids broke our trampoline. They do that about every 2 years. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not replacing it. You have to replace it. You all have jobs. You're going to pay for it. But they do jump on it a lot, and they talk and spell and count and all these things. There will be really hard days when you're homeschooling, but don't give up. I mean, there are days after 25 years I'm like, oh, I wish that school bus was picking up my kids today. But you know what? Just stop what you're doing and start over the next day. Because you don't want to ruin your relationship with your child because you're having a bad day or they're having a bad day. Tag team with your spouse, a relative or neighbor, or fellow homeschoolers to prevent burnout and to be refreshed daily. I think weekly, monthly, yearly too. Homeschooling is a marathon. Take it 1 mile at a time and complete the journey by finishing strong. Join a support group, my number one recommendation, because you can school cooperatively with other families, your kids can make friends, you can make friends, and there is accountability within a group. Okay, preschool. Who has little kids? Little preschoolers, okay. I didn't ever include this slide until about a couple years ago when somebody came and said, well, what should we do for our preschoolers? I'm like, oh, okay, well, I better add a slide. Okay, so in the old days, only upper middle class families sent their kids to preschool. And I know this because my family lived in an upper class life, and all of our friends went to preschool. And I said, well, Mom, we want to go to preschool. She goes, no, that is a communist structure. We are not going to do that. And it kind of is. So anyway, you can successfully homeschool your preschooler. It is the time for them to enjoy being with you and enjoy learning as you do everything in your day. They want to be with you when they're young, so be with them and enjoy it, because then they'll want to be with you when they're older. Focus on things like the alphabet, coloring pages or simple workbooks, counting, cut and paste. Super important, cut and paste over handing your kid the cell phone. Dance, exercise, put on the Zumba video in your living room. Playing, reading aloud, singing, and speaking. And singing is a super important preschooler skill. When my two of my adopted children got to be old enough to go to take piano lessons, we have a wonderful piano teacher. And she said, do you know that they don't know their nursery rhyme songs and their church little kid songs? And I said, well, we've been singing them for 4 years. I can't believe they don't know them. But just something in their brain didn't lock it in. But if you can teach your child to sing songs, especially Bible verses, they will remember those forever. Please limit technology and screen time. The American Association of Pediatrics says 2 hours max, and you should be on 20 minutes and then take a break for 20 minutes before you go 20 minutes again. Also, the 20-20 rule applies to personal relationships. If you spend one-on-one time for 20 minutes with a child in the morning, in the afternoon, and the evening, it really helps your relationship. So I want you to think about that. And when you have a whole bunch of kids, it's hard to find time to do that, but it is important. So even my daughter and I, when we're doing math, we're together, just the two of us. Accept that there will be messes and chaos. Be outside more than inside. When we lived in Denver, I was the mom who was notorious for putting my kids in their snowsuits in like a foot of snow and sending them outside the front yard to build igloos and all these other things. And people will come by and say, it's really cold out here, should your children be outside? I'm like, it's only 0, they're fine. Because it's good for kids, it's good for them. Okay, where are we going? There we go. All right. You can create a rich play environment for your preschoolers on a shoestring by going to Goodwill or garage sales, things like that. Asking people on Facebook if they have old, the outdoor play structures, Little Tykes play structures. Indoors, have art supplies, audio books and music, blocks, books, boxes. I mean, what kid doesn't love to play with an appliance box and it's free, right? Costumes, detective or doctor's kits, but just make sure that they're keeping their clothes on and not in a closet, okay? Dolls, kitchen toys, playing cards, pillows and blankets to make forts in the living room, puppets, puzzles, stuffed animals, tinker toys, and toy vehicles. Outdoors, you can have balls, butterfly nets, croquet, little tyke structures, jump rope, a low-height tree house, and I do not recommend a zip line. There was a terrible accident of homeschool family who had just put up a zip line in Arizona a couple months ago, but I don't recommend that. So that's why it's a low-height tree house. A play gym, a sandbox, sidewalk chalk, a supervised water table, toads and turtles in your gardens. My grandkids are having so much fun catching toads and turtles. They just have to keep them out of the house. Okay, with your preschooler, you can also pre-develop school skills. So to pre-develop their interest in Christianity, take them to church, have them sit with you in church. They can go to Sunday school, but also have them sit with you in church. Do family Bible devotions and hymn singing. For civics, geography, and history, you can teach them about maps, go to museums, field trips, and extended family reunions. For consumer skills, they can run errands with you to the bank, shopping, the post office, and your parents' work. For language, speaking in complete sentences, and I still say this to all my teenagers, please tell me that in a complete sentence. Letters of the alphabet and one-syllable sight words from their favorite books. So Dr. Seuss books really are the best, right? Cat in the Hat and all those. For math, counting, cooking, and measuring, measuring cups are just a great thing. Measuring things with a ruler or a yardstick. For physical fitness, walk or run to the park, play outside even in cold weather, do calisthenics inside on bad weather days. Household chores like sweeping and walking the family dog. For science, they can help you with baking, kitchen science, outdoor nature studies, night sky and weather, and catching endless insects. Social skills, communicating with family, learning safe interaction with strangers, please, thank you, taking turns, and sharing communal items. My grandkids are learning that everybody has their own toothpaste tube, and that's what they need to use, and please don't use mine. But there are communal items, right? I mean, people have their own individual things we need to ask permission for, and then we have things we share, like the living room sofa. All right, is anybody taking their child out of public school to homeschool? All right, so this slide really speaks to you. So you have to transition because they have expected school to be one way, and it's going to be different now. So you need to de-school, and that means you need to help them understand that it's not institutional school at home. Share your heart with your child about why you're homeschooling. And some kids have begged their parents to homeschool, and they finally do. So you need to repent and say, I'm sorry you wanted to homeschool. Well, we're finally going to do it. Humble yourself and repent if necessary. Start slow and focus on your relationship. So if you're not going to start school till September, just do fun things over the next few weeks. Go to the library, go to the zoo, make a model together, have like a restaurant night at your house where you make a French dinner together. Do things that are relationship-based. Ask many questions of them, and teenagers don't necessarily want to answer a bunch of questions, but rebuild your connection and relationship with them. Ask what they want to learn and build your core subjects around that. If your child wants to learn about the Revolutionary War and he's in 7th grade, well, that's fine. It doesn't have to be in whatever grade a textbook says they should learn about it. He wants to learn that, then learn it. Reduce outside activities that don't foster relationships and threaten peace. So I would say the number one problem area for a lot of homeschool parents is team sports. So you really got to think about whether you want your child to play football on the public middle school team. Maybe he wants to do that because he wants to be around some other guys, or he just wants to play football. So instead, invite people over to your house and play touch football once a week, or get something organized after church. Find out the reason they want to do a specific extracurricular activity. If it fits with your family and schedule, fine, but if it's a distraction, figure out how you can meet the need in a different way. Remember that home education is about a close relationship lifestyle, which sets the stage for lifelong learning. It is not about test scores or approval from others. The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. Consider this: Jesus spent 3 years homeschooling his disciples in a learning, living, loving, serving lifestyle, and they changed the world. All right, prepare your child by creating a chore system. Again, this is a Terry Maxwell kind of thing, but you can find other sites that offered it if you need help. You need to remember yourself and help your children remember that work is a gift from God. Your cheerful and diligent example is the best teaching skill you possess. Kids need to help you with their shared home so you can help them with their schoolwork. So that's really true. You have to delegate some of the stuff that you do so that you can take on homeschooling your children. Use responsibility to build character and a work ethic. Many hands make light work, and be sure to have fun while you're doing it. Put on the Jimmy Buffett or whatever fun music you want to listen to while you're cleaning the house, and then have a treat together somehow when the chores are done. And again, here's charts. The one on the left shows, little images. The one on the right is more typed out. All right, prepare your child with biblically based child training resources. So if you feel like your kids are out of control, you really need to get some help, because this is part of homeschooling, is learning how to manage your children and helping them be able to self-govern themselves. So you can find older, wiser mentors who'd be willing to learn from them. So maybe an older couple in church who's raised kids and their kids are doing great, or maybe someone in your family, or maybe a neighbor. Please ask for help, because you really do need to get your kids under control. Scour the book of Proverbs for all it has to say on the topic. And again, Kevin Swanson has written an excellent Proverbs study guide, in addition to on Genesis and Psalms and lots of other study guides, but the Proverbs one is really good. Are you married? Get on the same page as your spouse for discipline. There's nothing worse in a family dynamic than good cop, bad cop. And my husband and I kind of got into that situation when we adopted kids, and they triangulated and made me be the bad guy and him be the perfect guy. And so we had to really work on that, and we were be on the same page. Set goals and determine methods together. Work in harmony, help each other, and date your spouse. If you're not dating your spouse, you need to, because homeschooling will really wear you out. Loving, unified marriages are key to building strong families and successful homeschools. Many a bad marriage has been finally, given the death knell by homeschooling. One of the parents leaves. And we don't want that. We want you guys to be happily married and enjoy raising your children together. So recommended books on parenting are Family Life, A Simple Guide to the Biblical Family by Kevin Swanson. That's kind of the why of good parenting. And then Intentional Parenting by Linda Stanke is the what, and it's really, she's great. She's a homeschooler from Colorado Springs. She's a grandma now, and she wrote what I think is the definitive book on how to learn to parent your children. And then Shepherding Your Child's Heart by Ted Tripp is also the how. And we raise sheep on our farm, and sheep are stupid and stubborn, and they need a good shepherd. And we should be glad that Jesus calls us sheep and not goats, because goats are horrible to raise. So anyway, Shepherding a Child's Heart's a really good book. Okay, what do you do with infants and toddlers? So if you have older kids that you're trying to help school, and you have little kids too, the older kids can trade out helping with the little kids, whether it's, changing their diaper, feeding them a bottle, playing with them. You can also get baby gates and put a toddler in a secure room, or you can just have them play nicely in the same room that you're schooling in and just keep an eye on them. Okay, single parent homeschooling. Is there anybody here who's a single parent? All right. So I want you to look at it as a season of duty, challenge, and sacrifice that can work. So I really am going to be glad to be done homeschooling 3 years. I've been homeschooling for 6 years without my husband, and single parenting is really difficult. But I'm also really glad I'm able to do it. So for yourself, you need to schedule school in between your work and other commitments. You need to simplify down to the basics for this season, only the essentials. So one thing that I don't do, and people ask me if I will, and I'm like, I just can't, is, oh, let's go meet for coffee or have lunch. I'm like, sorry, I just cannot do that. And for this season of my life, I'm just not going to do it, and it's okay. But self-care is essential. Plan breaks and have another adult or two who can take over to give you weekly, monthly, and annual breaks. So now that my daughter-in-law is living with us, yes, she's going to take over so I can go on a cruise for a week, and then I'm taking another trip later in the fall for 2 weeks, and she's going to run things for me, and I'm so glad because I've needed to do it for 7 years. Seek the Lord. With him all things are possible. He is strong when you are weak. Be courageous, steadfast, and joyful. It will positively affect your kids for life. So one of the things I had to decide when my husband died very suddenly is that I had to be the glue that held my family together, and I had to be cheerful and joyful, and we had to keep going on the same course. And we did, and it was very difficult. But you can do that as a single parent. Search online for social media groups, Christian single parent homeschoolers. For your students, reading, writing, and arithmetic are the basics. Add their interests and yours along with requirements of the law. Do 4 hours a day times 172. It's okay to do the minimum until your life allows for more. Online learning or co-op classes are totally fine for your kids. They need to be doing most of the house chores with your supervision. Put them to work helping you in your business or starting their own for extra money. Read the Little Britches series by Ralph Moody. It's about a single mom raising kids in the early 1900s. Your life isn't as bad as you think. It teaches character and work ethic to children along with steadfastness to adults. And it's a 7-book series. I call it Little House on Steroids. And if you've never read the Little Britches books or heard them on audio, they're just awesome. Okay, so this is about the Homeschool Guidebook for Colorado, and it just kind of lists out the chapters. So you can look at this in your PowerPoint when you take it home. But basically, it covers everything you need to know about homeschooling in Colorado. I want you to have joy with homeschooling. I know a lot of really crabby homeschool moms, and I do not like to be around them, and I'm sure their kids don't either. And I'm sure there's been times when I was a crabby homeschool mom, or worse, is a dad who is just totally disengaged. So dads, I want you to engage and have fun with your kids and your wife. And moms, I want you to find something every day where you're laughing with your kids, whether it's watching a movie together, playing outside, making a mess in the kitchen, it doesn't matter, but your kids need to see you enjoying homeschooling them. It's very helpful to build a support system. So the Czech State organization is great to be a part of, and there's homeschool groups listed on the website. There's church leaders and congregation members if they're supportive of homeschooling. And I would give you a caution. If you go to a church that is not supportive of homeschooling, you might need to rethink the church that you go to, because Christians should be providing their children with a Christian education. So the kids need to be going to Christian school, or they need to be Christian homeschooling. And if your pastor or other people in your church give you a hard time for homeschooling, you might want to pray about it. Your extended family, if they're supportive. My parents are super supportive. My siblings are super unsupportive. So we kind of drew a line in the sand a while ago, and it was fine. Friendly, trustworthy neighbors and seniors. When we lived in Denver and started homeschooling, everybody on our block was over 60, and they just thought it was so cool we were homeschooling. We took them baked treats. We went and took care of their house when they went out of town, and they were just wonderful, and it was a great time in our life for my kids. HSLDA is a great place to join, and they have a wonderful website. And then if you can find a local homeschool support group, I really recommend that, or at least get together on a regular basis with other homeschool families. And then there's a lot of pages on Facebook that I enjoy, including the Weird Unsocialized Homeschoolers. I really like that one. Okay, so about having joy, there's some personal challenges you need to consider. First of all, we are entrusted for the care and raising of our children by God, and we're accountable to God for them. We should remove things that offend them and us. When we first started homeschooling, another homeschooling family challenged us to get rid of our TV. Well, I mean, I was shocked, but we did. And when we moved to our farm, we did not get cable. So we have a lot of movies, and we watch those, but we don't have all those nasty commercials in between the football games, right? Okay, so we removed that. I'm not saying you have to, I'm just saying it worked for us. Submit to God how He wants to use home education to sanctify your family. We can and should do the best that we are able to do, especially for our kids. Parents have the advantage. We care for our children and know them best, and we love them more than any other adult ever could. Parents can best blend discipline and structure with love for our children. God is on our side. We can search His Word, the Bible, and learn everything we need to know to parent our children. I added this slide after my, I guess it was last year sometime, because my teenagers were complaining about a homeschool family in our homeschool group, and they no longer belong to our group, but they were saying that, you know, the parents weren't doing this, they weren't doing that, the kids were out of control, blah, blah, blah. So I sat down and said, so what would you tell new homeschoolers? And I'll put it down and I'll tell them. So this is from my 3 teenagers. Have fun and show kindness. Correct us gently. Don't be crabby. So that basically means they can be yelling at you, but you can't yell at them. Look at us instead of your phone. Oh my goodness, isn't that a killer? Pay attention to us. Do schoolwork with us. Don't just assign us stuff. So there's a few things they go in their room and do, but they want me to help them every day. Have a daily routine and require chores to build a work ethic. And I about fell over when my one teen said this, because that teen, I won't say if it's a boy or girl, was always the first to roll their eyes and complain when I said, okay guys, it's time to do chores. But I guess that was important to that one. Don't pamper us. Be responsible and train us. Be reasonable and train us. Don't have a messy house. Well, I just fell over when they said that, because if I didn't remind them, it'd be messy. Daily pickup and weekly clean make it nice to be home. We might complain about the work, but we like a clean house. Do a good job parenting and homeschooling us. Kids deserve to know Christ, have loving parents, be encouraged for their future dreams, and receive a good education which prepares us for adulthood. And I really agree with that. You know, God gives all of us dreams and callings in our life. And if we don't help our kids develop those, I don't think we're doing our best. So if your child says, I want to be a ballerina, or I want to go on a mission field, or I want to be a doctor, or my one child who has the worst time writing says, I think I want to go into criminal justice and become a lawyer, and I'm like, you know how much you have to write for that? but I didn't say, no, you shouldn't do that. Don't be overly controlling or too permissive. Funny. Have a big family, but don't have lots of kids if you aren't going to take care of them. And that is my children's number one complaint about families that have a lot of kids, but they don't take care of them. And I'm not saying the parents don't take care of them, but that's what my kids think. Feed us nutritious food regularly and serve us enough food so our brains and bodies can function and we don't worry about food. So all three of my teenagers are adopted, and they all worried about food when they came to us. Give us a truly good education. Final thoughts on joy. So accountability is imperative, and that's why I think it's important to attend church regularly and be in a support group. There are quote-unquote homeschoolers who abuse their kids. Mostly they've just let their kids be truant and they say they're homeschooling. They're not really homeschooling. But we don't want anybody to ever suspect, all of us here, that we're mistreating our kids. So if we're out and about in public, even going to Walmart, even going to church, whatever, people in our community see our kids, and that's a good thing. And you do have to teach your kids how to behave in public and to put on decent clothing so they don't look their worst. We have farm clothes and we have town clothes. And you have to put on town clothes if we're going to Walmart. But then when the Walmart cashier says, oh, why aren't you in school? What grade are you in? You need to teach your child to say, oh, I get to be homeschooled, and if I was in school, I'd be in 3rd grade. So, coaching. Child development. Research to know what experiences your children need during infancy, toddlerhood, and elementary, tween, and teen years in order to maximize their overall health and learning throughout their lifetime. You know, we just really don't help parents learn about any of that in our culture. And you really do need to learn that an infant needs to learn to crawl before they walk, and that a 3-year-old should be able to put 3 words together to make a sentence. You know, there are benchmarks. And if your child's not hitting them, then you might need to be concerned about something. Kids and adults need a routine. Homeschooling is about learning at home. Stay home more than you go out for your children's education. Limit extracurricular activities. Kids need to have set bedtimes, expectations of when to get up in the morning to be ready for their school day, when meals will be served, and how they should contribute to the shared household through chores or responsibilities. Slow down the pace of your life so it's not a rat race. You want to simplify and enjoy your family now. All right, so I think it's important for children to have a nurtured childhood. I was blessed to have a nurtured childhood with 2 loving parents who spent a lot of time with us and gave us many opportunities, and we played outside all day long in the summertime and on Saturday. You know, we used to ride our bike like 8 and 10 miles all through the neighborhoods. We never checked in or anything. Well, we can't do that anymore, right? But your kids need your time and attention. They need opportunities to expand their minds and to maximize their ability and skills. Socialization is important. Teach your kids manners and other social skills. Teach appropriate dress. Is it casual, business casual, formal? For different opportunities and events in their lives. As Christian homeschoolers, we have the opportunity to reach out to others and become community leaders. So prepare yourself and your kids to do so. Priorities. It's hard to juggle everything, so put God first, your family, nurturing provision second, your homeschool third, and the hundreds of other things are the corn, right? Put around those tennis balls. Okay, we're getting to the end here. So this was my family photo taken 2.5 years ago at my oldest daughter's wedding. And she at that time was living in Atlanta, and she said, I think we should have a destination wedding. Nobody really wants to come to Atlanta, do you? And I'm like, well, what were you thinking? She said, well, I was thinking of the Florida Keys. I'm like, okay, sure, that sounds great with me. So we all went to the Florida Keys for her wedding. And my son, who's in the military, was not able to come, but this is his verse that he clings to as he serves as a Marine. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. And I think that applies to homeschooling too. We really want to help our kids mount up with wings as eagles. Okay, so today we've discussed how to prepare your home, how to prepare your child, how to prioritize your time, how to schedule your day, how to choose your curriculum, and how to enjoy your homeschool journey. So when you leave here today, I don't want you to think about how overwhelming all that information is. I want you to go home and think, how are we going to enjoy being together as a family this weekend? That's why I want you to start your homeschool journey, okay? All the other stuff will fall into place. Okay, so if you need to get a hold of me for any question, I'm happy to respond to your email. So it's on the last page there. I also have a Shari@check.org email, which I just use that for Check Business, so you can use my personal email. And then don't forget to go to the Check website. And did Steve mention about the Colorado homeschool videos? Did he mention that, Josh? Okay. So Check, just in the last couple months, produced a series of, I think there's 5 videos that are less than 10 minutes long, and it covers the 5 main topics if you're interested in homeschooling. And you go to coloradohomeschool.com, I believe. And it's free. You just log on with your email, and then they send you the link. I really encourage you to take an hour and watch those. You can watch them one at a time, one day each this week, or you sit down and watch them together. But they'll build on what I talked about here and what Steve talked about this morning. Okay, so I'm ready to answer questions, and I'm sorry I'm sitting in my chair like this, but this helps my back not be killing me. So if you have a question, please stand up and ask your question. But if it's a private question, you're welcome to come up to me, okay? Any questions? Yes, Heather.
Shari, I just want to thank you because I can see you're kind of slouched, and here you're like serving all of us, encouraging all of us, and I know you must be in pain. So
I'm happy to do this. Good, good. Well, I work for Check doing different jobs, but this is something I volunteer to do because I love it, and I just want to encourage you guys. So anything you need to ask, nothing's off the table. Any other questions? Yes. The hardest thing for homeschooling as a single parent? Yeah. I think the hardest thing is that I'm never off the clock. And I did read an article one time that was hilariously written about a homeschool mom in Hawaii who had, in Hawaii, houses are really small, and she had like 5 kids in a 2-bedroom house, and the only place she could have a desk for herself is they took out a hall closet and put like a shelf across it that she could have her computer on, but there was no doors or anything, and it was right in the middle of the hallway where everybody ran. And she couldn't get anything done. She couldn't have time alone. She was too tired to do her computer work after her kids went to bed. So she went to the dollar store and bought herself a tiara, you know, a little crown. And when the queen had on her crown, no one was to bother her. And, you know, I thought about doing that, but I never did. But I think whether you're a single homeschool parent or you're married, whether you have 1 kid or whether you have 10 kids, I think the hardest thing is you feel like you're never off the clock. You get up in the morning, you have to start right away. You hit the floor running, and I fall into bed at night, and I have to say, I confess, I do have a glass of wine every night and watch a James Bond or related movie. And that's my time, 2 hours, and usually I fall asleep in 15 minutes. But you do have to carve out your own little space in your own little world. And if you have another adult that can help you, great. For many years, it was just pretty much me. But I think the sacrifice is worth it, but you just cannot burn yourself out. In the Czech guidebook, the last chapter is about battling burnout, and it is so good. It was written by Patty Doughton, who's a longtime homeschooler, longtime friend of Czech, and she said, I'm sending you this, I don't know if it's a magazine article or what, but I'm just sending this to you because I know you'll get this. So I read it, and I said, Patty, this is just awesome. I think every parent gets burnout, and I think every homeschool parent gets burnout. And it talks about her journey of being burnout and what she did to recover so she could keep on homeschooling her kids. And it is really good. I think everybody should read it, and so that's why we put it in the guidebook. It was a bonus chapter of the reprint. So you do have to take care of yourself, and that's not being selfish. I think we can become martyrs, and we shouldn't. We should just keep ourselves physically and mentally healthy so that we can help our kids grow up. Any other questions? Okay, Josh, I guess you can close